Okay, great, thank you. We're using Zoom for this meeting, which allows for public participation in the meeting. The chair can request members of the public to provide their names for purposes of keeping accurate meeting minutes. Attendees must register to participate. The registration link can be found, actually, we don't do that. Attendees will join the meeting in listening mode, can raise their hand if they wish to speak. The chair will call on those who've raised their hand in order that they were raised. All questions should be directed to the chair. As a preliminary matter, this is Brian Sullivan, Chair of the Affordable Housing Trust. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Dave Iverson.
Here.
Penny Dye.
Here.
Chantal Murphy.
Here.
Tom Dixon.
Here.
Welcome, Tom. Rima Sherry.
Here.
Meg Browers.
Here.
Great. I see that for the number of trust members. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Alice Ramos.
Here,
Welcome.
thank you.
Thank you. Tucker Holland.
Here.
Great. Thank you, Tucker. Anticipated members or speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative. We have Judy Barrett
Here.
and Janelle Austin.
Here, thank you.
Great, thank you, Janelle. Good afternoon. This is an open meeting. The Affordable Housing Trust is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Zoom.
Brian. Tucker to Brian, his audio is out.
Tucker, do you want me to continue with the introduction?
That would be great, Rima. Brian's
Okay.
having some internet issues.
Right, so let's see, where are we? We got, I'll just start at the introduction. Good afternoon. This open meeting of the Nantucket Affordable Housing Trust is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Affordable Housing Trust is convening by video conference via the Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agendas unless the chair notes otherwise. Ground rules. We're now turning to the first item of the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. The chair will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public that have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged by and speak through the chair. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call. All right, so that brings us to the first item on the agenda, which is where we've been called to order. And second is approval of the agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
So moved by Penny, seconded
Second.
by Chantal. Okay, great. And let's see. Tucker, would you like to welcome Ellis?
Point of order.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you,
Sorry.
Penny.
Yes,
Always
I'm sorry. I think we just need to vote on that motion.
on the agenda. Yes, I know. I'm always forget that. I'm so sorry. All right, so by roll call, Dave Iverson,
Aye.
Penny Dye,
Aye.
Sean Blythe Murphy,
Aye.
Meg Browers,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Okay, sorry about that. I'm never good at this. Okay, now let's welcome Ellis. Woohoo.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us, Ellis. This
Thank you
is
guys for having me.
very exciting to have some help over here. All right.
Excited to have
Tucker, do you have anything to add to that?
We are thrilled to have Ellis joining us.
Yes, we are. All right. Item 4, approval of the minutes. I would like, yes, Penny, go ahead.
Yeah, I started to proof them and I'd like to make a motion that we hold on the minutes to our next meeting, giving us a chance, just because there's so many of them.
Yeah.
To proofread them.
Okay, and a second on that?
Second.
Okay, who said it first? I think I heard Sean. All right, second by Sean. So by roll call, Dave Iverson,
Aye.
Penny Dye,
Aye.
Chantal Blythe Murphy,
Aye.
Meg Browers,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Okay, great. All right, now item 5, public comment. Oh, Penny.
Sorry, I'm just not sure where to say this, but I think we need to welcome Tom Dixon as the newest
Yes,
select board
You're
member.
right.
When we were
Yes,
doing welcomes, so
I know.
welcome, Tom.
Thank you. Good to be
Welcome,
here.
Tom.
I
Happy
got big shoes to fill from Brooke, but I'll try.
All right, and I'm going to recognize Megan Perry for the purposes of public comment.
Uh,
Oh, Penny.
I'm gonna recuse myself. I wasn't at the meeting.
Okay, well, we're not moving on to 5. We're still, I mean,
Okay,
we
thank
were in
you.
5, but we're
I
not moving
understand.
on to our discussion.
Got it.
Okay, but now in public comment, Megan.
Hi there, thank you. I was calling in about public comment, not the next item on your agenda.
Okay.
I was actually shocked to learn just this morning that the Affordable Housing Trust will be paying to wine and dine someone coming in from Vail. And they'll be housing him and his wife at the Nantucket Hotel that is.
Your
Breaking up,
audio is
Megan.
Going
breaking.
trips.
I'm not hearing her.
Can anybody hear me?
Now we can.
Now we can.
Okay. So I was just saying that I was a little bit shocked to hear the Affordable Housing Trust will be paying to wine and dine someone coming in from Vail and housing him and his wife at the Nantucket Hotel, arranging for sailing trips and tours and stuff. And that appears to be all at taxpayers' expense in peak season. So I'd like to receive a full accounting of this, and I'm just curious what this is labeled under so taxpayers can find this, and how many other things like this the group has done. This person is coming in from Vail for a conference on the Cape, and so I'm curious why our housing director can't go to that conference on the Cape versus spending thousands of dollars to have this person come over here to meet with the Affordable Housing Trust work group and Surfside Crossing. And I'm curious where the Affordable Housing Trust work group will be meeting. Will this be another catered party at the developer's $60,000 per week home? It makes me wonder, is this why the Affordable Housing Trust didn't want to have oversight over their funding? Because this seems a little above and beyond. And it's been in the works for quite some time. So I would really like a list of all town officials and employees who will be taking any part in this wining and dining experience versus sending somebody over to the Cape. So that's my public comment. And I was hoping that you could please answer those questions.
Well, first I would suggest that a request should come in writing to us. But you know, we are recorded. And Tucker, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm not sure that that's really like an accurate representation of what's happening here. So we have the opportunity to have, well, first of all, I am attending the One Cape conference where George Ruther, who is the housing director of Vail, is a keynote speaker. The Vail Symposium, as the trust and public know, had invited me out last winter at their expense to participate in a housing symposium. I was there with George as well as Lori Best, the housing director of Breckenridge, and Vail is doing some innovative things, particularly their Indeed program that I think may have direct relevance to what the trust is working on in terms of year-round deed restrictions. So George being here on or, you know, in the neighborhood, if you will, on the Cape, we have the opportunity to bring him over here. There is going to be a public forum with him at the Athenaeum next Wednesday evening at 6 o'clock about, you know, his work in Vail, particularly the Indeed program. And then, as the trust members know, we have a meeting scheduled with him the following day on Thursday at 11 o'clock to have kind of a work session again to understand better what they're doing in Vail and what application programs that they have implemented there may have for us here in Nantucket. And the wining and dining characterization and the trust paying for it is not accurate. So you know, we're happy to provide more information about that at a later date. Thank you.
Thank you, Tucker.
May I continue to ask a question?
Yes, Megan.
Sure. So I guess my confusion comes from the email from Josh Posner to Tucker Holland asking that the Affordable Housing Trust help pay for at least 50% of the expenses for this gentleman to come. And so it also indicates that if he wanted to go sailing, that Tucker could arrange that. So that's where my confusion comes from. And maybe there's an email afterwards saying the trust would not be doing that, but that was not provided to me. So if there's any clarification on that, I would greatly appreciate it, as hotel rooms and dinner in peak season are quite expensive. And it's a little bit frustrating as a taxpayer to have funds go to that from the Affordable Housing Trust.
Well, you can sleep well because taxpayers are not paying for that.
All right. Are we all set?
I think so.
For the next one. Okay. All right. The next item is item 6. The OML complaint from Megan says Gawacki, dated July 12th. And
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Just a moment. We have someone on that isn't identified as a Zoom user. Could that person identify themselves?
yeah, is that Billy?
Yes, with a mouthful of potato chips. My apologies.
All right. Get your name on there, please, Billy, so we know. All right, Penny.
Yeah, I'm going to recuse myself of any discussion about item 6, given that I was not at the meeting. I was off island.
So Penny recuses. All right, and Tom.
Rima, I will abstain as well since I was not on the trust at that point.
Okay, and Tom abstains as well. All right, Tucker, you want to get started with Janelle?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, actually, I'm going to let Janelle lead us through this item, if that's all right.
Okay, Janelle Austin from our town council's office.
Thank you, members, for having me this afternoon. Thank you, Tucker, as well. So we're here today, as you know, pursuant to the meeting notice to review, acknowledge, and review an open meeting law complaint that was filed by the complainant back on July 12th, 2023. I believe that a copy of the complaint has been distributed to all the members in advance of the meeting, and we're here to review the allegations of the complaint generally, discuss the trust's response to that complaint, and pursuant to the open meeting law, there needs to be a vote to issue a response both to the complainant herself as well as to the attorney, with a copy to the Attorney General's office. In essence, the complaint, if the members would like me to walk them through it, is essentially that the trust violated the open meeting law back on April 7th, 2023, pursuant to the executive session and what was listed on the meeting notice. The complainant makes an allegation that it wasn't discoverable until the minutes were subsequently provided with redactions for privileged information subsequent to the meeting. The proposed response before the members this afternoon is essentially that more than 30 days have passed since that meeting took place back on April 7th, 2023, and certainly well after the 30 days from when the meeting notice was posted back on April 5th, 2023. But regardless, as you all know, you voted to release the copy of those minutes back about a month ago or so. So the meeting minutes have been publicly released pursuant to the open meeting law, subject to redactions, which are allowable under the public records law for privileged information. A copy of those meeting minutes, it's my understanding, have previously been provided to the complainant herself. With respect to, some outstanding meeting minutes of the trust, as you all know, pursuant to the motion that you just made, those were up for consideration today. They'll be pushed to a future meeting given the volume at issue. Ellis is now with the trust to help, and so staffing issues have caused a minor delay in approving those meeting minutes, but the trust and certainly staff are working diligently to deal with that backlog, and good faith efforts have been made. Obviously, we want to issue a response consistent with the trust discussion this afternoon and any comments that any members may have as well. So we would just be seeking, after any questions are made, a motion to approve the draft response subject to any changes. We would need to modify the draft that was provided because it does contemplate that the meeting minutes that were on the agenda today would be approved today, but certainly we can indicate that will happen at the trust subsequent meeting. So that would be the only update to the draft that's before the members this afternoon. And happy to answer any questions that anyone has as well. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Janelle.
Thank you.
I want to note that Brian Sullivan had joined the meeting around 12:45, but it doesn't look like he's able to take over chairing at this point. Okay, so I will continue. Tucker, you have your hand up. I'm going to go to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Janelle, very much for your work and guidance on this. I had, one thing to mention. I'm not sure if it's relevant to the letter itself, but all of the trust meetings are the public portions, obviously not executive session, but the public meetings are recorded and are available on the town's YouTube channel. And we've made a point in our agendas during this time where, we've been a staff of one versus normally a staff of three and working on catching up on the minutes. We've made a point on the agenda to mention to folks under the minutes section that the meetings are available for viewing on the YouTube channel. So I don't know if that's relevant to your letter, but I just thought to mention it.
Thank you. And we can certainly incorporate reference to that as well, Tucker. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments from members of the trust? No, okay. Oh, Meg.
Just want to point a little clarification if we could. So in the third to last paragraph of the letter from Miss Austin, it says that we voted to publicly release the April 7th executive session meeting minutes on May 30th, and that the complainant was provided a copy of this. Was that done by email? And if so, we have that email record, and so therefore that's where we're coming up with the concern that this complaint was not filed within the 30-day time frame. Am I understanding that correctly?
So that would have been handled by the town's records access officer. I don't have a copy, Meg, of that particular email, but that is the information that I was provided in terms of the timeline at issue here.
Great. It would be nice if the town could provide us with that, just so that we can understand and be sure that we're following protocol. And if we are, that makes me feel much more comfortable knowing that that's how we're handling things moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Meg. Anyone else? Tucker, do we want to open for public comment at this point, or do we want to entertain a motion to accept the draft that will be modified of our response?
Well, I would somewhat turn to Janelle on this, but I feel like this is a trust matter in terms of responding to the complaint. So whatever Janelle's direction would be is what I would follow. But we do want to take a vote, I believe, to authorize her to furnish the response to the complainant and the Attorney General's office.
That is correct. It is a trust matter to acknowledge the complaint and authorize a response under the open meeting law. Certainly, we'll need a new date for approval of those outstanding meeting minutes, so I can update the draft accordingly as a result of the trust's motion earlier in this meeting, so we can add that and clarify that to make sure it's 100% accurate. But after that, it would just be a motion to authorize it consistent with that update, so to speak. Thank you.
All right, then I would entertain a motion to acknowledge the open meeting law complaint and have Janelle modify the draft to reflect what we discussed as far as minutes and timeline. Anyone?
I'll move that.
Moved by Meg. A second, please.
Second.
Second by Sean. Thank you. Okay, by roll call, Tucker.
I just want to make sure with Janelle, does that motion include everything you need it to include, Janelle?
That does. It would just be a motion to authorize the draft prepared by town council, subsequent to just updating the date, so to speak, on that particular issue. So that's
Okay.
fine. Thank you, Tucker.
Yep.
Good. All right, so are we ready to vote? Looks like it. Okay, so I'm going to start with Dave Iverson
Aye.
and Chantal Blas-Murphy,
Aye.
Meg Browers,
Aye.
Brian Sullivan,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. All right. Okay, so we are going to move on to item 7, which is a covenant formation assistance application by Norman W. Chalecki for 10 Field Avenue. I hope everyone was able to see the application that was provided to us. Is there any questions or discussion by trust members? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve this covenant formation application. And we provide funds, Tucker, correct me if I'm wrong, up to $10,000 to aid in forming a covenant on the property at 10 Field Avenue. And it's set up as a loan, and when the property is sold, then the applicant will return the funds to us. So
Exactly. And Housing Nantucket administers this program.
yes, and we're happy they do. All right, I would entertain a motion to approve this application.
So moved.
Second,
Penny, and seconded by Dave Iverson. By roll call, Penny Dye,
Aye.
Dave Iverson,
aye.
Chantal Boers Murphy,
Aye.
Meg Browers,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Brian Sullivan,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Great, congratulations. Thank you, Mr. Chalecki. We have another covenant lot coming on. All right, item 8 is the 135 and 137 Orange Street request for proposals update. I'm going to hand this over to Tucker for that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, as the trust knows, the RFP is out and proposals are due on August 22nd, 2023 at 3 p.m. We had a good turnout of folks at the site tour earlier this summer, and I'm sure many of them are, hard at work on putting something together that we hope will be spectacular. And we're looking forward to seeing that project move forward.
Tucker, have we had any questions posted on this?
There have been some questions that were posed through the procurement office, and we've provided them feedback on those. I believe that they have issued an addendum, to the RFP answering those questions, but I will circle back with Elise in the finance office to confirm that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Penny.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, my little yellow hand doesn't work. Oh, it's up. Huh. Okay. At any rate, through you, Madam Chair, if to Tucker, it would be helpful for me to understand what happens once these proposals are received. What is the process for evaluation and who's responsible for that? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So generally, the proposals are received. There is a small group of folks led by the chief procurement officer, who is also our finance director, who open the packages and confirm that they are complete and that they meet the minimum submission criteria. I'll just underscore, it is extremely important that proposals are received on time. When we did the Six Fairgrounds proposal, as folks will recall, there were 3 bids that ultimately were reviewed and considered. In fact, there was a 4th bid that was received about 10 minutes after the deadline. It could not be considered, it could not be opened. So in any event, after the chief procurement officer opens them and deems that they have submitted the required information and can be considered, they then are reviewed by a review committee, which is appointed by the chief procurement officer. That will be done in advance of receipt of the proposals. And then that review committee will host proposers for an interview. And it's an opportunity for folks who have submitted a proposal to present what they had presented in their packet, and for the folks on the review committee to ask any clarifying questions about what they proposed. it's not an opportunity really for new information, but more clarification and understanding for the folks on the review committee. From there, they meet, they score or evaluate the proposals and collectively compare their scoring and collectively make a determination of who they recommend the bid be awarded to. And then from there, that goes to the select board ultimately to award the bid.
Just if I might, Madam Chair, a follow-up question. What is the criteria for the members on the review committee? Are there people on there with construction experience, design experience, local experience?
I mean, though, that's what we would be recommending to the chief procurement officer, similar to the group that was assembled for the review of the 6 fairgrounds proposals. So you'd have a variety of expertise, if you will, represented on that committee.
Thank you.
Is there anything else that we should talk about on this item? Tucker, are we ready to move? Okay. All right. Next item is the item 931 Fairgrounds update. And I know that we have Billy Cassidy as Zoom user in green. So I will ask Billy to let us know what's going on.
Okay. I didn't know I was doing this. In any event, first of all, Madam Chair, you mentioned expertise a minute ago. Clearly, I have no expertise with Zoom because I have no idea how the hell to put my name there. So, I mean, no disrespect. Maybe Ellis could help, or somebody that's driving the bus. In any event, so 31 Fairgrounds is proceeding. We began exterior painting yesterday. We began, on a solar note, we began excavation of the first of 12 footings, which are rather massive affairs, earlier this morning. And in fact, we may well be onto the second footing by now. We'll do either 3 or 6 right now, depending upon how it goes. We may manage in a smaller fashion. The first row of solar footings, which hold up the pergola or the I hate this term, but carport fashion. It will be on the side closest to Fairgrounds Road. And we have started on the Trotters Lane side. The fence, the privacy fence that we have erected, we began over in, again, the southwest corner, or the corner closest to Fairgrounds Road and Surfside. And we are, when I left there about an hour ago, we're about 30 feet from the end over in the Fairgrounds restaurant parking lot. So we are, we're almost complete with that. Other than that, you know, internal stuff just continues. We're moving along well. And I believe that an issue that we had a week or two ago has resolved itself. And I think that it appears that all of our funding is now in order and will be proceeding in a fashion we can all be thankful for. And I think that's all I got. Any questions? Oh, pardon me. There has been, we are actively engaged, literally almost at the moment, with the land bank in sorting everything out regarding the open space in the front of the property. That is going to, this is a technical issue, but nonetheless, we're going to reopen the special permit. And we're going to reopen the special permit because we're going to combine we're going to ask Dave and his group if we can combine the open space that had been heretofore bifurcated. There was an open space area in the front that everybody's aware of, and there was a strip around the back that, due to geometry, was the only way that our engineer could get it to happen. We rethought that, and the land bank, and frankly, any other holder of an open space restriction, finds the breakup of it a little cumbersome to deal with, going back behind the buildings with people living in them and monitoring that situation. I think it would be better, the land bank feels it would be better if we combined everything in the front and dealt with the driveway business as easement prior to the open space. And Dave, before I make your head hurt, this will all be explained well in advance through staff. And Arthur has it pretty much in hand. But that's it. Ultimately, nothing materially changes either for the occupants or for the, the occupants may get a little bit extra space out back, but materially nothing in the front whatsoever changes. And I think that this will be a really good outcome. What we had actually all thought it would be.
Wonderful. Well, that's great information for everyone in the public hearing. And Penny.
Yeah, just quickly, I'm on the construction committee, and I just want to thank everybody, and especially Tucker, for guiding us through some fairly Byzantine processes in the last month or so. And that's it. We're moving forward, and the end is in sight. Thank you.
And Brian, would you like to take over the meeting now that you seem to be stable over there? Let's see if we can hear you.
You're doing such a good job. I don't know if, let's see. Okay, I'm happy to, but Rima, thank you very much. Let me see.
I'd just also like to acknowledge that we had the grant paperwork for funding of 31 Fairgrounds for the further funding in our packet. And it was good to see that and all the details in there. So just wanted to acknowledge that. Okay, take it away, Brian.
Awesome, thank you, Rima. So that will come up in a minute, but we'll continue in item 9. So Tucker, are you or Ann going to update us on the local preference, including municipal employee update related to 31 Fairgrounds?
Yeah, I mean, I can just comment on that. I mean, I think as we all understand from our prior meetings and discussions on this topic, certainly, discussions that Ann and I have had, and that was had with this Board of Selectmen, the Select Board. We are going to be applying shortly in the next few weeks to the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities for a special local preference. So just to lay it all out there, if you'll permit me, Mr. Chair, we normally local preference as administered by Housing and Livable Communities only applies to those 80% area median income units and less. And if a municipality is granted local preference, that ensures that a minimum of 70% of those 80% AMI and less units go to one of 4 categories of that fall within local preference. And one of those categories is municipal employees. And so what we will be seeking in conjunction with Housing Nantucket for this particular project is that when you consider there are 22 units, 6 of which will be restricted at 80% AMI or less, that 25% that we need in order for them all to count on the SHI list. 70% of those 6 units equates to 4 units. And so what we're going to be seeking from HLC is that two of those units be exclusively local preference to municipal employees, and the other two would be all four categories of local preference. Then for the units that are above 80% AMI, the balance at 31 Fairgrounds, or 16 units in this case, generally HLC does not opine on those. They are not subject to the traditional local preference, but we recognize that because they are all included on our SHI list, that HLC is likely to have some thoughts about what happens with those. And so we've again had a preliminary conversation with them about the idea of restricting a certain number of those units to municipal employees solely that meet the income criteria for those units, and that might be up to an additional 6 units. And HLC has said, we certainly understand what you're proposing. We think there may be merit to it. There's some information that you're going to want to include in your formal submission requesting this. We're calling it special local preference. But we're encouraging you to submit and make your case, if you will. The other thing to mention is that normally with local preference, it only applies the first time the unit is filled. And again, we're going to be asking for something special from HLC, which is that local preference endures, and that it when that unit becomes vacated, that it stays designated to municipal employee. We don't know whether ultimately they will agree to all this, but they certainly felt that we were making some reasonable points and a reasonable request, and they have a new secretary, as everyone knows, and so we'll get some some feedback from them. And we are, just as something to note, in the process of working on arranging a meeting with the new secretary where this subject would be one of a few we plan to talk about.
Thank you, Tucker. Does anyone have any questions related to that? Tom, I see your physical hand.
Yeah, Tucker, the income requirements for that project, would that be the 240 AMI that the trust, or was that a different requirement?
For 31 Fairgrounds Road?
Yes.
Yes, those units are going to be restricted, and Ann can correct me if I misstate this, but I believe they're the 80% AMI units, and then the remainder will be at 110 and 150. So under that 240 level.
Including the municipal preference?
Including the municipal preference.
Thank you.
Ann, are you on? Ann? Okay, I don't see her. I was just going to ask for a clarification there.
I'm
there you
here.
are. Hi, Ann. Did you have anything about Tucker's explanation and that the submission to HLC that you wanted to add, and or anything about the levels of income? Were you considering looking at restricting some units below 80%?
Yes, we have some units in our rent matrix anyway at 50% AMI. We had 3 units modeled in our model for 50% AMI. And then like Tucker said, we've got the 80% and 110s and 150s.
Great. Okay, thank you. I remember seeing a category at one point below 80, so I just wanted to double check on that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any members with more questions related to the local preference? Rena?
Not local preference, but I see that we were going to talk about the anticipated project completion time too. So I was wondering hearing about for that.
Great, let's move on to that. I don't know if we still have Billy, but maybe Anne could update us on, or
Really has his hand up.
great. Billy, are you available? Can you?
I am. I didn't realize I had my hand up still. But now that I do, I had it up. Pardon me, Mr. Chairman. First, I wanted to upstage Penny and thank Tucker, and more importantly, say hi to Tom Dixon. And I am grateful that he is here. And thank you for your vigorous advocacy of what we've been working on. And Sully, congratulations in person. Having
Thank
said, I believe that we're looking at mid to end of October.
Great. And to that note on the actual project, what Anne, Tucker, the submission to HLC, and then the marketing of units, and what do you foresee for that?
Well, the marketing of the units, we were planning to do that in September.
Great. Okay, cool. Any other questions from the board before we close this item and move to the next? Okay, seeing none, we'll close item 9, 31 Fairgrounds, and we'll move to item 10, year-round deed restriction advisory committee discussion. So today we have Judy Barrett joining us. Thank you, Judy.
Hi, hi everyone.
So for those of you who have not met Judy, Judy is a consultant who has helped us here at the Trust with a number of things over the years, including what's it called, our housing.
2 housing production plans.
Action
Thank
plan.
you. The housing production plans. So today, I think one of the goals that we're going to work through is the establishment of the criteria for the advisory committee, when we would hope to seek applicants to fill out applications, reserve a future meeting date for any questions from applicants. Then hopefully we can seat the advisory committee, identify the schedule of the number of meetings and the timing for the project, and kind of answer any general questions related to creating the committee and the goals of the committee. It's my hope today not to solve any of those questions, but to more create them so the committee can work through them vigorously for us. So with that, I'll turn to Judy to kind of outline how she sees things and then open to the board for questions.
So I did speak with Brian yesterday, just to make sure we're all on the same page about kind of next steps and what needs to happen. And I think in addition to what the schedule looks like and perhaps what the composition of the working group should be, it might be helpful to have a little bit of discussion kicking this off around how you define year-round. And then kind of springing from that, I guess I'd like to know what your thinking is about any sort of a definition that might somehow be tied to an income limit or not. But I do want to understand how you're thinking about year-round, because it has an impact on kind of where ultimately the benefit of this lies. And that may in turn affect how you think about who ought to be on the working group. So maybe we can have a little discussion about that, what you think year-round means. Don't everyone jump in first.
So I'll start without giving an opinion, but note that there are multiple definitions within the community currently of what year-round is. The tax code looks at 6 months in a day. The housing covenant program is, I think it's 10 months in a day. So I think those are the two extremes of the least, I don't want to call it restrictive, but the least amount of days and the most amount of days in requirement. And then there is some variety of other policies, whether it be the land bank or the assessor's office, on how they determine the number of, the year-round abatement figures. So there are a few models out there because, in my personal opinion, because the housing covenant program is well defined. It may be a nice model to follow. But that's kind of my thoughts. I'll go to Dave Iverson. He put his hand up, and then Penny.
I would agree that I think the covenant model is the one to follow here. I think the tax model it just has too much leeway. I think if we're going to buy restrictions, we should make sure people are living there. Thanks.
The covenant model is the 10 months and a day. Is that what that one is?
Yes.
Thank you.
Anne can speak to a little more closely, but I also believe that there's an affidavit and some sort of submission of bills related to it.
Okay.
Penny?
At the risk of oversimplification, what do we all think? When I hear or am asked if somebody lives here year round, they live here all year. I'm not saying it has to be 365 days a year, but it has to be strong enough that people aren't manipulating the system.
My personal opinion is I agree with that, but you do need to identify opportunities for people to take vacations and travel and be off island if they're sick, or there's a variety of reasons not to be here. So what do we define living here to mean, and what is the grace period? Meg?
Thanks, Brian. I wanted to just mention the conversations that Chantal and I had a few months ago about these definitions, and recognize that I agree with Penny and yourself that living here year round is a requirement. Defining that is where it gets sticky. And so the major sticking point that comes to mind is if you own your home and you leave the island for a long-term vacation and decide to rent your house out, maybe there should be a limitation on that. And then we also talked about employment as an opportunity to prove your year-round status, children in the school district as a way to provide evidence of your year-round status. So I have notes on that. I know we talked about it at some length, but those were my, I think I definitely agree with what it seems like everyone's saying, that the 12 or the 10 month and a day at a minimum should be the year-round residency. And I don't know if I have bad reception or not.
I think we got it.
I can hear you.
Chantal?
I was going to bring up the conversation that Meg and I had and say that I agree with Penny. And I mean, even if people are going on vacation, they're not changing their addresses while they're on vacation, even if they're gone for 3 weeks or a month. So I don't think that should affect it too much. And we also have to keep in mind that we do live on an island that's very remote, and it's really hard being here in February and March. So if someone decides that they want to go visit their mom for 5 weeks, that doesn't all of a sudden make them not a year-round resident, especially if they're, if they're a registered voter and this is where they're registered to vote, their kids are in school, things like that.
I wonder, Judy, if there are things like, benign things like vehicle registration, voter registration, address you file your state or federal taxes from, that could be part of the identification of residency process. I do worry about identifying kids in school, or for people who don't have kids, or there's a variety or people who don't have jobs but are here. So I worry about attaching employment or family status or any of those things. Meg?
Yeah, just to clarify on those comments that I made, not requirements, but ways to prove residency. If you weren't, I don't know. But I also think that it's important for us to recognize that if this is strictly related to the year-round deed restriction program, which is a financial incentive, and you're renting your house out for a number of days while you go off island on vacation, you're making the choice to do that financial incentive. So it can't be best of both worlds in my mind. That's the way I'm thinking this through. Like if you're going to live here year-round, you are eligible for a potential deed restriction. If you are living here 9 months of the year or 10 months of the year and renting your house out for the summer, then I think that's where we need to get into the gray area of what amount of time can you rent your house and still be eligible for the financial benefit of the deed restriction program versus just taking the fact that you're not eligible and then choosing to rent out your house for however much you want.
I'll challenge that, Meg, just with the thought of, I think about school teachers that are here for the year and may take the opportunity to leave the island in the summer and be able to capture more affordability in the community by not being here. So while I understand where you're coming from, I don't want to close opportunities. That's my personal opinion. It's tricky. There's going to be a lot of discussion and a lot of things to balance here. That's why, we'll create this committee. To kind of manage through it, but that's one group of people that hopefully we can help solve a problem for, because our a high needs group, one, retaining teachers, the salaries and living conditions are important for them. Dave?
Not that I want to even use the word STR ever
I knew
again.
this was
Rest
gonna
of my life.
I didn't bring it up, Dave.
I'm gonna blame it on Tom again. Listen, I think that we just need to restrict how many, and this is short-term rental talk, but how many contracts that you can have if you get a deed restriction, because I think that at some level we need to make something available to these people. They're already struggling. Even with a deed restriction, the house is not going to be cheap. I just think that we need to limit it and not just let them. So I think that that's something that the work group will figure out. But I would vote, not more than 4 weeks of rental. But that's just me. Thanks.
Rima, is that a hand?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Brian, through you to Judy. Can you give us examples of how any other communities in the Commonwealth have done this?
So typically things like a utility bill, a property tax bill, something you can clearly show your residency is tied to a particular address. And I think, as Meg was trying to say, there might be options for different types of documentation. I think about the I-9 list for employment. There are different ways to satisfy the requirement that you are a citizen. And you probably could have a system like that. You could know this is sort of basic. If you can't provide, one of these, then you have to provide 2 of these or something like that. I mean, that's typically how certainly, verifying that someone's going to be a resident of a home ownership unit or something, you would want that documentation. So I don't think this is rocket science, but it is helpful to hear this discussion.
But also, as far as how long someone has to be here, and are there any common rental restrictions? I mean, do they allow renting, or for how long? Just as examples, if you have any.
Well, you are doing something a little unique here. So it's not like you're going to find a ton of examples. I mean, I see Anne with her hand up, and I have a feeling Housing Nantucket may have some good models for this. But I certainly know, when you purchase a first-time home buyer unit, the assumption is that you are going to live there as your principal residence, barring, occasional personal absences. And it's not well defined in the deed restriction, the standard state deed restriction, but the assumption is that you are going to be using that as your principal residence. So, but this is a little bit different kind of creature here. This is something that's got a pretty significant financial benefit, I would think, and a restricted supply. So I'm imagining you're going to want to have some way to really verify that the purposes of the program are being achieved. So I'm not sure how comparable somebody else's practice will be, but I'm happy to look into it.
Thanks.
One thing I do want to consider is that is the discussion about the owner or the occupant? And make sure that we are creating opportunities for tenancy and ownership with restrictions.
Sure.
So some
Okay.
consideration. I'll come to Penny and then to you, Anne.
Yeah, just quickly, I think it's about both, Brian. It's about the owner and the occupant. One thing, the Steamship Authority has a fairly rigid system of verification for residency for the preferred program, which is you have to be in the street list, right? And show, I think it's utility bills. But we're going to be checking deeds, aren't we, on these houses?
I would think. Well, I would think so, but that goes back to the question of occupant versus owner.
Yeah.
So the deed's a step, but not necessarily.
Right.
And
I
he's
feel like
selling
we're
it
getting
to
a little bit ahead of
good.
ourselves with these details. I thought we were going to talk about the composition of the group.
We will, Penny. Get
Thank
there.
you.
So Anne, to you, and then I think Dave might have.
I just wanted to point out that in the covenant program, there's no rental allowed at all, not one night. So that I would think that that would be something that should be upheld in this program as well. And then just some of the items that prove residency in our programs are tax returns, driver's license, bank accounts, motor vehicle registration, voter registration, and tax assessor records. So we need them to provide 2 of them. If there's a suspected residency violation, we need them to provide 2 of that to prove that they do live in the unit. And I think it'd be pretty hard to manage and oversee if there's some kind of rental, short-term rental restriction that's put on these units as well. So, and then also just one correction, it's just 10 months, 10 out of 12 months. So that's how the covenant program is.
Thank you, Anne. That's helpful. I'm using a phone, so I can't see everybody when I'm scrolling. Does it?
I don't think there's any-
Anybody? Okay, so Judy, shall we move to the next topic? That kind of.
Yes. I guess I'm wondering how you see kind of the size of a functional group. And are there particular groups or organizations or interests that you think really ought to be represented on this working group? Is that all right to go there?
Penny?
We should go there, Brian. You agree?
Yeah, that sounds great. Penny?
Yeah, we talked extensively about this a few meetings ago. And if my recollection is correct, we talked about a group of not more than 9. I think people felt it would get unwieldy if it exceeded that. We also specifically talked about having 2 representatives from the trust as part of this group and the rest at large. But we have to be mindful of the any violation of open meeting law, right? Is that 2 or 3 of us? I don't know. Does anybody know? No.
I think it's the third.
It's the 3rd that makes it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I remember. Thank you.
Meg?
What I recalled from that conversation, I know we went around and around about it for a while, but I thought we actually ended on like 11-person work group with 2 or 3 affordable housing trust representatives, and then the rest being at large with internal conversation about ensuring that we felt like we had representation from not only the diversity within our community, year-round people with expertise in certain areas, and then we could potentially select individuals from like the ZBA if we wanted to, or other town, depending on what we felt like the strengths and weaknesses of the applicants were, we could make decisions from there. That was my recollection.
Tucker, did I see your hand go up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, so to go back on on the open meeting, I mean, these meetings are going to need to be publicly posted anyway, no matter what. And so it, in a sense, you could have 2 trust members or 3 trust members, whatever you ended up determining. And to what Meg was just saying there, I think that the I think the discussion had been that some of the other boards or town departments that might have relevant input would be included somewhat on an ad hoc basis versus like a formal committee member. But again, that's to be determined by you all and Judy.
And that's how I remember it as well. We talked about maggot planning in an ad hoc seat. We talked about somebody from finance in an ad hoc seat versus taking seats away from at-large members. And I remember settling near 9 as the number with 2 trust. Kind of my recollection of going through the conversation.
Yeah, and just to correct myself, it was 9. I'm sorry, I checked my notes.
Thank you, Meg. I think it's important that, there's various organizations that are doing these kind of deed restrictions well. So I would encourage some experience from conservation, whether it's Land Council or Conservation Foundation has done years of strong deed restrictions. Housing Nantucket has also great experience with managing properties. I think that there's probably a need for some sort of understanding in the banking industry how these restrictions are going to be reflected in ratifying mortgages for people in their equity positions. I don't know if there's any local lawyers who are filing deeds and such will be important. And then I don't know if there's any need for development or developers as we are looking at a variety of different projects that developers are considering accepting deed restrictions on their properties as we move forward to kind of create these. Those are some of my thoughts, and just not the implementation of the program and who it services, but in the development of a strong program restriction. Rima?
Yeah, I just wanted to note that we did vote on a motion made by Brooke at the June 20th meeting to have 2 trust members and 7 at large. So that was already established by a vote.
I wasn't aware of that. Thank you. So let me maybe ask this another way. Suppose you go out looking for at-large members and you get a ton of applications. Everybody's dying to serve on the year-round restriction group. How are you going to sort through those and choose the members? And is it the trust that's choosing them, or is this going to be a body that's appointed by the select board? Who is actually creating this entity?
These are excellent questions. Dave?
Yeah, I guess the question is, are we allowed to, as the Affordable Housing Trust?
Very important question.
Yeah. And it's hard. No, she's gone. So yeah, I guess we'd have to ask town council about that one.
Right.
How did we do neighborhood first? Wasn't that under us? Penny?
I don't think we made the selections. Penny?
Yeah, I think you did make we did make the selections for neighborhood first. I'm pretty sure we did.
We voted on them.
Yeah.
On the applicants.
This is an entity that may be making recommendations that require some type of special legislation. And if that's the case, then you're talking about action at town meeting.
Ugh.
And I guess all I'm suggesting is you might want to think about whether that the credibility, or not coming up with a great word, but the influence of that group will be enhanced if it is a select board appointed committee or not. I don't know. That's up to you guys, but I do think the sort of who's picking the group is important. And in that regard, I would just say, whether it's you or the select board or somebody else, that somebody who's going to want to think about what's your selection criteria if you get a ton of applicants to serve on this, which you might. There might be lots of interest in this. So even if you're not trying to say, of the 7 that aren't trust members, we're going to have one from this, and one from some other group. Somebody's got to be thinking about how do you winnow down the list to 7 appointees who are going to make this a really functional, great group.
Thank you, Judy. I'm going to come to Tucker, then Meg, then Penny.
I just was quickly going to say, Mr. Chair, I believe Penny's correct that the Neighborhood First group was appointed by the trust, and that when we were discussing this advisory committee, Brooke had indicated when she was the select board representative to the trust a couple months ago that that she felt that this was something that could be appointed by the trust. Having just said that, I think Judy is bringing up a good point in terms of like the oomph of the recommendations of this group ultimately.
And Meg, then Penny.
Judy, I was wondering, or through you, Brian, to Judy, I was wondering if you had recommendations or past experience with criteria to use for members of a group like this. Maybe this has been done by other seasonal communities where we could come up with a framework to sort of keep track of the strengths of different applicants and make sure we're like a matrix of sorts that we're covering different bases. I think that legal counsel would be influential on this decision of how we recommend and approve the members of the committee. We would definitely want to make sure we have, you know, public support of the people in the group. But then I think if Neighborhood First was approved by Affordable Housing Trust, I would feel comfortable with us approving that, or I would also be fine with us making a recommendation to the select board. But I think I was hopeful that maybe you would have suggestions or frameworks that we could consider for criteria.
So Meg, I'm happy to do a little homework on that. Frankly, you're kind of path breaking here. I mean, there's not a lot of examples of this that I am aware of out there in the world of the seasonal and resort communities. That doesn't mean I'm not willing to look into it, but I just wouldn't be surprised if we're not going to find that much. And so I can, if I find anything, I will certainly tell you, but I think you know your own community well enough to know, you know, where are the benefits of this likely to be the most effective and relevant to what you're trying to accomplish, and to maybe thinking about the inclusion of groups, you know, who are connected to those. I mean, I'm just kind of making up numbers here, but you have vacancies in the schools and you can't fill them. So do you want someone from the educational community to be involved in helping to shape what this thing looks like? Should there be somebody involved from the hospitality and food service industry? Because there's such an issue around housing lower wage workers. I mean, I think there's like a range of people who make up this idea of year round, some of which are in the sort of professional jobs, so-called, or not in them because you can't get them to move there because there's no housing. And some of them are working in very low wage jobs and living in you know, conditions that could be improved. So I think you really, some of this comes down to how you see the benefit of this program falling within the local economy.
Can I add a follow-up comment? Perhaps it's worthwhile to consider adding this to the next meeting agenda and allowing public comment or asking for public input about criteria that the community feels are important before we make a decision unilaterally.
That's entirely up to you folks. It's a good suggestion.
I think what's also interesting between now and then is we do have the Vail Housing Director, George Ruther, coming to Island with some experience related to this.
Yeah.
So there could be, there is there are a couple of events that he will be hosting that this potentially could make the agenda, and we could post meetings, Tucker. So more than 3 board members can attend and have that dialogue. Meg, I'll leave that on the table at the moment and go to Tom and then Shanta.
Shanta, you had your hand up first, please.
Thank you. I was going to suggest that, from the conversation with Meg, 2 of the towns that we had looked at, one being Vale, to see what their restrictions were, but also Provincetown just came out with something, I think back in April, with a year-round deed restriction program that might be worth looking at how they formulated that as well to inform us. It's not exactly what we're looking for, but the framework of it at the very least is worth looking at.
Right. And I have some information about that. I don't think it's quite at what you're trying to get at, but it's certainly the question of how are you defining year round and how are you determining, who the sort of the target audience is, so to speak, for the units. So I can gather some information on that for you and bring that back to the next meeting if you like.
That would be helpful. Thank you, Judy. Tom?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think Judy also brings up a good point about special legislation and sort of thinking back to when I was legislative liaison. Just yesterday, the town sent up 9 home rule petitions to the legislature. And that is an awful lot of home rule petitions for the legislature to deal with. And I have full confidence in town council and Judy, et cetera, to write a sound home rule petition that would go through town meeting and then ultimately be sent to Rep. Fernandez and Senator Seer. But still 9 current pending home rule petitions is a lot. So that's a good point, that anything that comes through this potential body or the select board, et cetera, needs to be vetted and exactly what we, in the largest sense, really wants, and make sure that it's all good with the town, the voters, town council, house council, et cetera.
So there's a lot of parties and moving parts in that, and I think we should put the end goal of Springtown meeting as any legislative opportunity. So working a schedule backwards from there, which would be when do we need to make a submission with town council?
November.
As far as timelines on getting us moving along. Thank you, Tom. Tucker?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that town council was involved in the legislation that Provincetown submitted. So, Vicky has intimate familiarity with that. And then Brian, I don't know, you might have been, in transit or offline when we talked a little bit about George's visit next week. But so he is going to be doing a open to the public session at the Athenaeum on Wednesday evening at 6 o'clock, a talk on the Vale, what he's done in Vale, and particularly maybe around the Indeed program and application that things they're doing may have here, kind of a conversation with George. Again, we encourage the public to attend. And then also a public meeting, but the next day on Thursday, we have time scheduled for a trust meeting from 11 to 12:30 with George that really is like a working session to, get into maybe some details again of what they're doing and certain questions we may have about how that might be able to work here. Again, open to the public as our open meetings are, but those are the 2 things that George will be doing while he's on the island.
Great. Can we post a meeting for the Wednesday night in case there are multiple members of the trust that attend?
I'm going to look into that, Brian. I mean, that's not a trust meeting. It's a talk by George, and I'm not sure if we need to actually post a meeting. I mean, I think anyone is welcome to attend and ask a question and so forth. That seems awfully formal for something at the library, but I'll look into that. And if we need to, we will. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Rima?
Yeah, I read through the open meeting manual that was sent out, and we're allowed to attend events as long as we're not deliberating. It doesn't have to be posted.
Great. Thank you, Rima. Okay. So Judy, do you want to open another topic related to it, or it sounds like we're going to leave the topic open for a future meeting, potentially with George on, I think you said August 4th, Tucker?
Thursday, August 3rd at 11 o'clock.
Third. Got it. Thank you.
And I unfortunately cannot join because I will be in DC, although if there's an opportunity to join something remotely, I will be participating from afar.
Yeah, that will at a minimum be a hybrid meeting. So we definitely would love to have you join, Judy, if you're available then.
No, I'll make myself available. It's fine. Yeah, so I do have in my stash of goodies a copy of the Provincetown legislation. And what I don't know is where things stand with that. So I will do my best to find out before I see you again. I mean, I think it's a similar set of interests, but I'm not sure they're going the same direction you guys may want or need to go. So I will find out. I don't want to speak out of turn here. Brian, I think one of the things we probably ought to talk about is like, what is the schedule? If we're trying to get something on a town meeting warrant for next spring, working back, as I recall, your warrant, to get something on the warrant for spring is like a December timeline, January, when is it in there? Because we need to work back from there is the point. If we're going to try to get something done, then I need to know what that deadline is. We all do.
Right. Penny?
Yeah, Brian, through you to Judy, the select board can sponsor as late as the third week of January, typically. Citizens articles have to be in by the end of November usually, and this is sort of sliding based upon when town meeting will be held.
Okay. Did you say the January, Penny? Is that what you said for select board?
Select board, yep.
Okay.
But
Well,
it depends. I just want to qualify that and say it depends. I mean,
sure.
We've typically had town meeting in April, and now it's been May and getting pushed to June, so. But select board is the way to go if you want the most runway between now and then.
Okay. So it seems to me as though worst case, we should be aiming for some kind of resolution of this by the end of November, right? In case the selectmen, for whatever reason, decide not to be the sponsors of an article and it has to come from you. So how does it seem perhaps to have this be a standing item for a committee to be meeting like every other week? I mean, it seems to me as though there's a lot to do.
I would agree. Penny?
Yeah, also the planning board, and Dave, you can confirm this through you, Brian, to Dave. I think the planning board can submit later than the citizens as well. Yes.
So there may be a couple of opportunities beyond the end of November. My concern is just absent knowing how secure those would be.
I think in general, most of the boards can submit a little bit later, but I will get the timeline and forward it on.
Okay.
So everyone knows.
Yeah, it has to do with regulatory, I think.
Yeah.
I see. So, if we're trying to get to resolution of something by, say, the end of November, what kind of timeline is it going to take to get this working group pulled together? It is now the end of July. We're going into August at this point. How long does it take in Nantucket to get a working group pulled together?
Dave, from experience?
Well, I would say that if we can do it as a board, it probably would happen much sooner. And that's not a shot at the select board. I just think that we have far less moving parts. And so I guess it really depends on what town council says as to whether we have the authority to do such a thing. And then I guess it's how much time we have to sit down and figure that out. But I think that's probably a quicker way than to go through the select board.
So I don't know what the legal status was of Neighborhoods First. Was that an advisory group? Was it a town board? I mean, what was its status?
Advisory.
It's an advisory group.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Go ahead, Penny.
Ryan,
Go ahead,
yes,
Penny.
it was an advisory group formed by the Affordable Housing Trust with a very specific mandate with a very tight deadline. And it was well-defined what the goal was. And it was well-defined what the deliverables were to be.
Okay. I mean, I'm sure you can have your own advisors. I don't think that's a question. I think the question is if it's supposed to be operating as a town governing body, subject to the open meeting law and so forth, then I think the select board probably has to be the appointing authority. I am not town council, but I don't think you have that power. So
I don't think that, I don't think that's the goal. I think it's just to get a broader group of our community members to advise us on what their expectations are and what they're looking for out of a program like this.
Okay.
Penny?
Yeah, my understanding has, from all the discussions leading up to today, is that this is an ad hoc temporary committee to
Okay.
help us push this forward.
Okay. I don't want to overcomplicate it. Just try to make sure I understand.
Dave?
I guess maybe it depends on what the deliverable is, right? Are we going to, is that not we, because I'm not on it. I'll say that right now. Is the idea that this group is going to bring forward the legislation, or is it that we are going to provide our recommendations to the select board? Because I think that's where the rub might be, right, Judy?
Yeah, I mean, that's really what's the end product here.
Yeah.
End product is proposed legislation. I think we're having a different conversation than if it's a group to advise the select board about some proposed action that should be happening in the near future. But then I'm not sure you've got something that's going to be ready for the town meeting warrant. So that's a consideration.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to rush you. I just want to lay out here kind of what's involved.
Speaking from experience, it takes a lot longer just to form a board than you would think, or to form a group. And I guess it really depends on what town council says, whether we have the ability and what the deliverable is. So I fear that we might be really pushing it to get, depending on what town council says, to get on the regular town meeting in the spring.
Thank you, Dave. Tucker?
I'm going to pass to Meg.
Okay, Meg, then Dave, then Tom.
Trying without my video to see if my reception's better, or my Wi-Fi. I would like to voice that I think that this is an extremely critical and urgent program. I think that between now and January is a very reasonable timeline for us to put together this group and have significant conversations. I personally obviously defer to, more experienced board members and Tucker, but I personally would like to see this ad hoc committee come up with a recommendation for a deed restriction program and give it to us to review, and we can have ongoing conversation about it, and we can push this forward for whatever the next appropriate step would be. But I think prolonging it and having, I don't know, I don't necessarily know what the point of an ad hoc committee would be, to just discuss it in some, like in vague ways, maybe come up with some different criteria for different things over the next 6 months, and then take a step forward. Like this needed to happen 5 years ago. I think we should prioritize it, and I think we should give the committee deliverables of a recommendation for a deed restriction program. That would be my 2 cents.
Thank you, Meg. Tom?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to echo what Dave said about setting up a committee. So town meeting was in early May this year, and Mr. Barnes's article to set up the town council study committee passed, and it is being advertised, and we have our names, and we will be thinking about that, and folks will be coming to speak to the select board, and that committee will not be appointed till August 16th. So that's sort of a general time for, I mean, it's not exactly transferable, but May to August 16th, and then whenever they'll get started and sworn in, et cetera, and set up, and who's going to be their admin or minute taker, et cetera. So I just wanted to throw that out there on time frame as far as that goes.
Thank you, Tom. Tucker?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really endorse what Meg was saying. I mean, I don't think this can wait like another town meeting cycle. And you know, what Penny spoke about with regard to the Neighborhood First Advisory Committee, basically, we asked them to advise and give a set of principles and evaluation criteria to the deployment of the 25 million that had been voted at that particular town meeting. There was no specific recommendation of spending this on that or what have you. But with that framework, the trust then went about its work of deploying that capital. And I sort of see this somewhat similarly, although we are talking about potentially some legislation that the select board would need to sponsor on the warrant, you know, to go up to the State House. But I would definitely back moving as quickly as we can versus a more elongated process.
Thank you, Tucker. Dave?
Just wanted to echo what Meg said. I 100% agree, and maybe let's just put the pedal to the metal and see where we get, and maybe we can get something together for this next town meeting. But if not, then it'll lay in wait until the following town meeting. But I say let's get after it, and maybe we can make it happen. I mean, I think first step is to find out if we have the authority from town council, and then once we find that out, let's get moving.
Thanks, Dave. Meg, thanks for your comments. I echo them as well. Let's pour the gas on this. Judy?
Yes.
Any, just coming back to you, you didn't have your hand up, but I'm just, it feels like we have an idea of timeline. That was kind of last question. Oh, Rima just popped her hand up.
Yeah, I was waving my hand before. I think that we should get this going with a goal of mid-September to have the committee established. And that should give us, you know, time to get things together. And I don't know, for the 7 members, just generally, I was thinking we need a realtor, a large business owner, someone from schools, someone from a bank, police, fire, or hospital, you know, someone involved in first responding, possibly a retiree and somebody from healthcare. So, you know, just, I think that gives us a broad overview to choose from, just to advertise that that's what we're looking for and see what we get. But the sooner we can get this, you know, figured and get an ad out and get people applying, the better. You know, I agree with Meg. We need to get going on this. Thanks.
Thank you, Rima. Meg?
If I could add to Rima's list, which I agree with, I think we should, she said large business owner, perhaps another small business owner, someone with children in the schools, and definitely strong representation from the demographics within our community. So Spanish speakers, you know, people who rent as well as people who own, people looking to own. You know, there's a large Lithuanian community here, people of color. I just want to really make sure that part of our mandate with this committee is that we have a very solid representation from all of our community. I would hate to see this be all white people, to be frank, and all homeowners. We need to have representation from everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Meg. Chantal?
Meg, I feel like you're just sitting in my little brain and just screaming the things that I want to say before I get a chance to say them. I also want to stress that that group, and I'm going to say it, that group sounds really white and doesn't sound very representative of our entire community. And I agree that those people should be in the group. However, I hope that while we're doing our search, that we're putting a strong stressor or message out there that we want to attract a diverse group of people that is representative of our entire community. And most certainly should include some non-homeowners on that as well.
Thank you, Chantal. Tucker?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, this is kind of in the for whatever it's worth category, listening to all the really good discussion today. You know, when I think about the $25 million, the Neighborhood First, you know, that was 25 times the amount of money that had ever been allocated to the Affordable Housing Trust. And so we recognized, you know, with a great deal of funds comes great responsibility. And therefore we put together that advisory committee. We had some expertise in some of the members on there relative to the deployment of capital for housing. This is a little bit different situation. As Judy said, like, we're forging new territory here. I mean, Provincetown is, you know, putting forward something. There are other communities that are putting forward something. We're kind of asking citizens off the street to suddenly become experts in an area that is, again, new ground. And what I'm wondering out loud, and this may be, you know, a lousy idea, but is whether we go about this slightly differently, and that really it is the trust working closely with Judy and looking at what other communities are doing and really formulating what our thoughts are on this ourselves, and inviting a wide array of community members to participate in, perhaps it's a couple of focus groups along the way, and give critical feedback. I can just see that trying to ask people to go from 0 to 60 in a relative short time frame is asking a lot of the average citizen, even people who are interested in this topic. So maybe, I don't know, this is, again, it may be a lousy idea, but that's what's going through my head.
Thank you, Tucker. Judy, I'm curious about your reaction.
So, I mean, I do think, Tucker, that some kind of discussion group, focus group, call it what you will, needs to be part of the schedule for this, which allows the trust and the working group to reach a wide variety of audiences. Nevertheless, there needs to be a body that's going to make some fundamental decisions about what to recommend. And I would just want to make sure, for your sake now and for the long-term, I don't know, I'm searching for words, a legal basis for the restriction, that the people who are sitting in a position to say yay or nay on a recommendation represent the demographics of Nantucket. So you do need a mix of people involved in this. I mean, I like the idea of thinking about occupations that would be important to have represented. Conspicuously missing from the lists that I just heard is one of your more significant industries on the island, which is hospitality and food service. So, you know, just thinking about the range of work opportunities that exist, those that are difficult to fill and keep filled, those which are, you know, struggling to keep year-round folks, I would think about just having the working group include people from those industries, if you will, or those interests, and then we can fill out the who's missing through structured focus group type discussions and bring that feedback back to the working group and the trust. So I don't want to overcomplicate this, but I do think you need to be prepared that you may get a lot of interest in serving on this. I have no idea, but you might. It's Nantucket. So, you know, once you have this discussion next week, while the gentleman from Dale is there, the interest may pick up, and you may just have to make some tough choices. So be prepared to have to do that, which would be a great position to be in, frankly. Instead of having to wake up the community about this problem, you've got, you know, people you have to hold at bay.
Thank you, Judy. Dave, then Meg.
With all due respect to Mr. Holland, I think you're underestimating our community. I think that there are people that are more than capable of doing the work, doing the homework, and getting themselves up to speed in a fairly quick way. And I think that just being part of the work group is an education in itself. So I'm not scared of having regular community members here. I think that they're invested and I think that they are very capable. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Meg?
I agree with what Dave said. I also appreciate what you're expressing, Tucker, in that, you know, we want to be efficient. Two last points, I think. One, with like the utmost respect for this committee, but we don't have the representation on this committee that I would hope that we would have on a subcommittee in terms of the demographics of our island. So I think adding people to the conversation can't hurt. We are asking them to get up to speed quickly, but I think, like Dave said, there are many people who are interested. Hopefully this program can be extremely impactful and extremely important to the island. So I think we will have interest. I hope we will have interest to serve. And then also just to bring up the point from earlier, we can always bring in experts, whether it's banking, finance, CBA, real estate, you know, what have you. We can bring people in on an as needed basis to join in the conversation. But I think having the community members with the on the ground experience navigating the homeownership system is super important.
Thank you, Meg. Tucker?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify one thing, and I appreciate totally what Dave had to say. I mean, it's not a question of the capability of our community members in any way, shape, or form. No one has more belief in our year-round community than I do. But I just simply, I think we're all talking about the importance of representation and process at the same time trying to meet a certain timeline. And so it's just, I think we've got to be eyes wide open and do the best that we can.
So it sounds like outreach to attract people to serve on the working group will be really important. And that's kind of a job for you folks. Brian, I'm wondering if maybe what I should do for your next meeting on this is to sort of put a discussion document together, kind of reflecting what we've talked about in terms of what year-round means, the group, which I now understand you had already voted on what the size should be and so forth, options for its composition, what the schedule will look like in terms of their meetings, and maybe even what some of the topics that need to be tackled will be. Because that might help to make sure, for example, if we need to bring in some particular experts, that we can see ahead of time where we might need to fill some capacity needs. So if you want me to do that, I'm happy to.
Yes, please.
Okay. So how often do you guys meet? Is it every other week or twice a month, or what's your schedule?
We are basically every other week right now. On Tuesdays, 12:30.
Okay, so your next meeting would be on the 8th?
Well, we have a meeting on the 3rd. And then I don't know, that's a specific to George Ruther, but I don't know what we have planned after that because of that meeting.
I see.
August 15th, next meeting.
The 15th would be our regular normal next meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I can't count days anymore. I'm really sorry. It's just so bad. So if you want me to join that, I can. I would have to leave by 2. I have a 4:30 meeting out in Central Mass that I have to attend in person, but I could certainly join you until 2.
So we would absolutely put you early on the agenda. I think it would be great. At the very least, we can get you a copy, if you're not able to join us from DC, of the meeting, the video of the meeting with George. And then let's plan to put you early on the agenda for the 15th.
Yeah, I'm going to do everything I can to join that meeting remotely on the 3rd when he's here. So if the technology exists to do it, I will be available.
Great. Thank you, Judy. Does any members have any last comments or questions from Judy, understanding our plan from here? Seeing none, we'll close this item. Again, thank Judy, and we'll open item 11, review and approval of the grant agreement
to Housing Nantucket for 31 Fairgrounds Road.
I'm gonna sign off. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Judy. Take care. So this was sent around. Are there any questions, comments, thoughts? Tucker, do you want to make a high-level presentation before we look for a motion?
I mean, just very basic, Mr. Chair. You know, this is reflective of the up to $2.5 million grant that was recommended by the trust and approved by the select board. It does talk about actually that special local preference cooperation that we just discussed a few minutes ago in there. And this has been reviewed by, obviously it was prepared by town council. It's been reviewed by Housing Nantucket and their legal advisor, and they are satisfied with it. And so we simply would like your concurrence that it's good to go and execute.
Great, thank you. Any comments? Look for a motion to approve and execute.
I'll make a motion to approve and execute the grant agreement for Housing Nantucket, the hopefully final one for 31 Fairgrounds Road.
And a second?
Second.
Second from Dave. Vote by roll call. Chantal Murphy,
Aye.
Penny Dye,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Dave Iverson,
Aye.
Meg Browers,
Aye.
and Brian Sullivan's an aye. Moving on to the approval, review and approval of the grant agreement for Habitat for Humanity for 9 Benjamin Drive. Again, Tucker, I'll give you the opportunity for a high level.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Similarly, as everyone will recall, it was recommended by the trust for an additional $236,000 in funding for the completion of the 3 units at Benjamin Drive. One note, I believe in the version that was circulated to the trust, there is a simple address change. It may have reflected 35 Old South Road, and the correct address is 75 Old South Road for Habitat for Humanity. Other than that, or with that modification, simply again seeking your concurrence that this is good to go. Habitat has reviewed it as well, was prepared by town council, and we think we're set on that.
Great, thank you, Tucker. Penny?
I'll just make another motion. I also want to, before I do that, thank town council for getting these done in such a timely manner, because it was really important to do so. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the grant agreement to Habitat for Humanity for 9 Benjamin Drive, the project there.
Is there a second? I think that was Meg.
Yep.
By roll call, Chantal Murphy,
Aye.
Penny Dye.
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Rima Sherry.
Aye.
Dave Iverson,
Aye.
and Meg Browers.
Aye.
And Brian Sullivan's an aye. Great, thank you on that. The next item, other business, we talked about the meeting with George Ruther a couple of times. We'll move on to item 15, board comments. Any members of
Mr.
the
Chair,
board have comments? Penny?
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
we skipped
Tucker?
one.
Yeah, you
Oh.
skipped an item. I'm sorry.
No, thank you. Thank you.
13.
I'll come back to that. 13, 7-letter communication strategy agreement around the transfer fee. Tucker?
Yeah, so actually, I just want to start by echoing something Penny said there. Vicky is away this week, and so she's not joining us at the meeting, but I also want to extend my thanks to Vicky for addressing a whole number of issues last week, which we really appreciate. With regard to item number 13, the extension of the 7-letter communications and strategy consulting agreement, the trust will recall that we have been working with this firm over the course of the last year and a half or so on the advancement of the transfer fee, by way of strategy and communication, relative to a housing bank, if you will. I think it's fair to say that there is momentum around this at the State House. The Boston Globe recently, their editorial board came out in favor of the transfer fee. I had circulated a article that was printed by the Globe, a separate article printed by the Globe about 10 days ago. And then actually the consulting firm had worked to get a letter into the Globe from the sheriff in Martha's Vineyard. In this case, basically underscoring that first responding departments across the Cape and Islands are having real difficulty in retaining and recruiting professionals, not for lack of people wanting to enter the field or that the salaries aren't competitive in those areas, but because of the housing issue. And that letter was printed last week, and the governor actually called the sheriff to say, he was spot on. And he called for, obviously, in his letter, the passage of this transfer fee. So anyway, a little bit of anecdotal stuff there, but there is unquestionably momentum around this at the State House. So we don't really feel this is a time to let up on the pressure, so to speak. And Martha's Vineyard is, similarly joining us in this work. And so we're simply looking to extend the contract through the informal period of the legislature, which we're about to enter into. So talking August until December, and at the $7,500 per month rate that we currently are paying. So we, seeking the board's, discussion and ultimately approval on that.
Thank you, Tucker. So with that, we'll open for some discussion.
Yeah, I just have a question.
Yeah, Penny.
For you, Mr. Chair, to Tucker. Out of what bucket is this being funded?
Like out of our legal and professional services line item.
Thank you.
Other questions or commentary? Rima?
No, I was going to make a motion to approve the extension of the contract with 7 letters for strategy consulting agreement on the transfer fee.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rima. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second from Penny. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call. Chantal Murphy?
Aye.
Penny Dye?
Aye.
Tom Dixon?
Aye.
Rima Sherry?
Aye.
Dave Iverson?
Aye.
Meg Browers?
Aye.
And Brian Sullivan's an aye. Thank you, everybody, for the continued support there. I will say that it's helpful when we do make it up to the State House, that the continued effort moving along. Okay, so that was 7 letter. Close that. We covered next meeting. Board comments. I think Penny had a, yes, Penny.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Just very, very quickly. I think we as a group should extend our most sincere thanks to Brooke for her service on this board in some formal way, with a letter, Tucker, or something. I know so often when I serve on stuff for the town, you serve and you go off and nobody ever says thank you. So I just don't think I know we would not be where we are without her guidance and tutelage. I also want to mention that I just got reappointed by the Housing Authority to another 1-year term on the trust. So I'll be here for another year. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny. I agree. Let's get that letter going and anything else worthwhile, because I agree we wouldn't be where we are today with all the progress in the last handful of years without Brooke's efforts. Any other board members have comments unrelated? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion to adjourn, not to return, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, real value of property where an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of a public body. Items on the agenda: 27 Fairgrounds, 44 Maya Comet, 1818A, 2022, 24, and 26 Sparks Ave.
I'll make the motion and add not to return to the regular meeting.
Second,
Thank you, Penny. Second from Dave by roll call, Chantal Murphy. I didn't hear you, Chantal.
Aye.
Great, I got you now. Thank you. Penny Dye.
Aye.
Tom Dixon.
Aye.
Rima Sherry.
Aye.
Dave Iverson.
aye.
Meg Browers.
Aye.
And Brian Sullivan's an aye. Thank you for this. We'll see you shortly. We can't